Metal Gear Solid 5 is one of the biggest games on the horizon, ahead of Final Fantasy 15, ahead of Kingdom Hearts 3, and even ahead of games like Watch Dogs. Metal Gear Solid 5 is the top of the list. Like Metal Gear Ray itself, it'll be demolishing the competition whenever it's fully released, but to tide us all over, Konami has released a little demo for us to play. Serving as the introduction to the world of the full game, The Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes is basically an introduction to some of the new mechanics in the franchise. Does it leave a good first impression, or should Snake have crawled back in his box? Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes takes place sometime after the events of Peace Walker, and Snake has been sent to rescue some POWs in an American black site camp in Cuba, Camp Omega. The POWs he is sent to rescue, Paz and Chico, two of the characters he met in Peace Walker. Unfortunately, that's all the story to be found in Ground Zeroes, which is a great shock coming off of Metal Gear Solid 4. It's hard to comment on how good what we get is, considering how little we get, but I can say that it allows us to play the game, which is what this game was all about, surprisingly. The entire game takes place in a semi-large base and has no indoor areas. This may sound disappointing, and it is, but it allows for a greater focus on the gameplay mechanics. Snake controls much like he did in Metal Gear Solid 4, but he handles a lot better. Movement is tight and responsive. You still crouch by pressing the X button, and you can walk while crouching. Pressing the X button again will cause Snake to crawl, and this is used to sneak around more silently. While crawling, Snake can fit under things to hide and crawl through openings to enter an area without so much as a peep. Of course, if you are familiar with Metal Gear, you knew all that and I just wasted your time.
Kept you waiting, huh?
What is new here is pretty game-changing personally. While crouching, Snake will automatically stick to corners, allowing you to pop out and shoot enemies quickly. You also have a pair of binoculars that you can tag enemies with. When tagged, enemies will have red icons above their heads that are visible to you at all times, and when you stay still, you'll be able to see them through walls. This is a neat inclusion and it allows you to be even more tactical with how you move. Snake can also climb things by pressing the triangle button, and this allows you to reach higher areas. Pressing directions on the D-pad change the weapon that you have equipped, but there are only a few on this base. Snake starts with an assault rifle and a tranq gun, but you can also pick up your enemy's guns. The shooting plays similarly to Metal Gear Solid 4's, but it feels more like a third-person shooter here, and now you have regenerating health. Now that's not to say that running and gunning is your best bet, though that is certainly an option here. Sneaking is still the way the game wants to be played, taking off points from your ranking for every kill and combat alert you trigger. If you press the options button, you open up Snake's iDroid menu, your pause menu. I'm not sure if true, but it doesn't look like the game pauses, so you'll want to use it in a safe place. From the pause menu, you can check out controls, mission objectives, listen to tapes you found, among other things. Another new feature are the vehicles. I've only found one in the mission and it handled somewhat awkwardly, but it's also not recommended to use if you want to be sneaky. Everything mentioned may not seem like a big deal, but it goes a long way to making the game feel good to play. Previous Metal Gear games were crippled by control, and that makes them age rather poorly. This game controls excellently, and if you mess it up, it feels like it was your fault, not the controls. One of the last things to mention is the enemy AI, which is still Metal Gear levels of good. They have better eyesight, hearing, and coordination, making them much more satisfying to sneak past. The gameplay also allows for some freedom in how you progress, where the other Metal Gear games forced you to progress in only one way. In this small base alone, I found more than 3 ways into one of the areas, which is more than you can say about the previous games. My only complaint about the game is the same complaint ringing through everyone's minds: the length. This game is literally only one mission and it took me 90 minutes to complete. That's an hour and a half for a $35 game here in Canada. I personally don't regret the purchase, as it confirmed my prediction of the main game being vastly improved, not to mention that my completion percentage was only 10% upon clearing, but I can also understand people's frustration with its ultimately short length. If the game were $20 across the board for all platforms, then I'd have no issues with it. As it stands, however, whether or not this is a bad thing or a thing you could ignore, all relies on how many times you're going to replay the game. On the whole, however, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes is another kind of gear to play. The visuals in the game are outstanding, and it's probably the prettiest non-exclusive PlayStation 4 game available right now. Some things look better than others, and the fact that it's always raining during the main mission makes the environment look kinda the same, but it's all very impressive nonetheless. Snake's new model and design look fantastic, as does everything else about the game. The animation is stellar, and the frame rate is a rock solid 60 frames a second. It's top of its class in the visual department, but we never doubted that, did we? From the audio side of things, Snake's prologue adventure is just as good. The music is moody and fitting, and the voice work is all well done. Like usual, Konami has pulled voice actors from everywhere, including anime, and some of the voices are familiar to people who play more Japanese games. The biggest change about the voice work is the fact that Snake has a new voice actor, Kiefer Sutherland. Whether or not you like the fact that David Hayter is missing in action, Sutherland does a fantastic job with Snake, and it goes a long way in his transformation from Snake to Big Boss. Metal Gear is known for its audio as much as it is for everything else, and Ground Zeroes doesn't disappoint in this regard. Overall, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes is a fantastic game if you can ignore the length and ultimately the price point. $35 is asking a little too much, and Konami should be ashamed, but there's no denying the quality here and just how fun it is to sneak around with the new mechanics. The story may not really be there, and the game obviously ends on a cliffhanger, but it's easy to ignore that whenever you think about playing more and more of the game until the Phantom Pain arrives. Hate on Konami, not the game. Get ready for the biggest release of this year or next. The Phantom Pain awaits. Ground Zeroes is awarded a 4 out of 5.